Hi, I want to share some synchronistic kind of trails and breadcrumbs I picked up today, just where one idea was leading to another. And the background of this is that I've got friends. We talk about Gnosticism, especially Gnosticism as we begin to build the church here in Britain. One of the questions that comes up is like the role of the sacrament. Now, for people who come to Gnosticism who have been raised in a Christian tradition, maybe even other exposure to other esoteric Christianity before they get to Gnosticism, for those sorts of people, the whole role of the sacrament of the Eucharist is like a slam dunk. It's something that has become almost second nature to you. And also the revelations and the mystical connections with the Eucharist are also second nature. But for people who come to Gnosticism unchurched, or even in worst case scenarios, people who come to Gnosticism because they're inspired by the light, yet they also have a lot of pain and trauma associated with earlier Christian experiences. For those people, the Eucharist can be a bit of a, not just a bit of a mystery, but it can also be archaic or out of place. So I have a few friends who are in this situation, and we talk about the role of the sacrament in Gnosticism, along with the whole idea of how in the new age going forward, in modern 21st century Britain, what is the role of how does Gnosticism fit into Christianity, and how does one practice Gnosticism in a broader context without giving up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So today I had begun my day leafing through little booklets that I could read while waiting for people to get back to me at work. And I came across the Hymns of Hermes. Now, this is a collection by G.R.S. Mead that has a number of Gnostic hymns taken from the Corpus Hermetica, some from the magical papyri, and other various classical sources. And it's got a wonderful introduction by Stephen Haller in the beginning of it that looks at the role of Hermes in Gnosticism. And of course, it's all there. In fact, Hermes and Thoth in many of the understandings of Gnosticism, going back to Hierotheus and other people, the idea that what Christ is universal mind, which of course is also Hermes and Thoth. So there's some wonderful prayers in here, and I think this would be a wonderful thing to work with in some sort of a workshop in the future, because there's just some lovely classical things in there that would be worth exploring. So anyway, coming across some of these hymns in here, and I'm tempted to read one out. It's not too long. Okay, I'm going to read one out because I'm tempted, and I probably budgeted your experience here. So I'm going to start off with one from this is from the Greek magic papyri, called the Song of Praise to the Aeon. Hail to thee, O thou all-cosmos ethereal spirit. Hail to thee, O spirit, who doth extend from heaven to earth, and from earth, that's in the middle of the orb of the cosmos, to the ends of the abyss. Hail to thee, O spirit, who doth enter into me, who clingeth to me, and who doth part thyself from me according to the will in the goodness of his heart. Hail to thee, O thou beginning and thou end of nature, naught can move. Hail unto thou, thou liturgy, unwearable of nature's elements. Hail to thee, O thou illumination of the solar beam that shines to serve all the world. Hail to thee, O disk of the night shining moon that shines unequally. Hail to thee, ye all spirits of the ethereal statues of the gods. Hail to thee, all holy brethren and holy sisters. Hail in giving their praise. O Spirit, mighty one, most mighty, circling and incomprehensible configuration of the cosmos, hail. Celestial, ethereal, interethereal, water-like, earth-like, fire-like, air-like, unto light and unto darkness like, shining as do the stars, moist, hot, cold spirit. I praise thee, God of gods, who dost ever restore the cosmos, and dost store the depth away from thy throne of the settlement, and no eye can see, who fixest heaven and earth apart, and coverest the heaven with thy holy everlasting wings, and makest firm the earth on everlasting thrones. O thou who hangest up the ether into the lofty height, scatterest the air in thy self-moving blasts that makest the water eddy round in circles. O thou who raisest up the fiery whirlwind and makes thunder, lightning, and rain, shaking of the earth. O God of the eons, mighty art thou, Lord God, old master of all. So that's the hymn of the praise to the aeon. So, inspired by that, and still waiting for people to get back to me at work. I then went online to try to find the original source, because the hymns to Hermes, this small book, is all taken from G.R.S. Mead's book on Trice Great Hermes. So Trice Great Hermes is available as a PDF online. And I'm going to share my screen for a little bit so that I can show you and read it. This particular version of G.R.S. Mead's, it's not completely digitized, it's just the images, but still, it's nicely broken up into words. And this is from the University of Wartburg, sites in the States. So anyway, as I was looking for things around Hermes and that, it caught my eye when I opened up this book that there is a chapter in G.R.S. Mead's book concerning the crater or the cup. And as I'm planning for a lecture on the Holy Grail later this year, it caught my eye and I thought, oh, this is something to pursue. And here we're into the idea of Gnosticism, sacraments. And we've got hints here of pre-Christian sacraments that offer us as modern Gnostics an expanded idea of how to approach the sacrament. Of course, you can take these ideas and apply them to the Eucharist as it's there. That's fine. But if you personally, or you're working with people who are working with a lot of emotional scars or trauma from Christianity, it might be it might be good and interesting to try to approach this from a more classical Greek Hellenistic sort of Hellenistic pagan approach to the sacraments. So open up J.R. Mead's chapter on the Creator of the Cup. It begins with this verse. He filled a mighty cup, with it mind, and set it down, joining a herald to it, to whom he gave the command to make this proclamation in the hearts of men. Baptize thyself with this cup's baptism. So there we've got this linking of mind and Hermes to the cup. And he goes on to explain, whence came this idea of the Creator of the cup into the Trismegistus literature? Most scholars will answer unhesitantly from Plato. The Creator was a cup with the Creator mixed with the elements of the world soul. And we read this in Timaeus, where Plato is treating the formation of human souls. Thus spake he, and once again, the cup that he had used for the blending and mingling of the souls of the universe. He poured the remains of the elements he had employed, he mingled them in such a way and manner that they were not, however, pure as before, but in the second or third degree. And then from after this, J.R. Mead goes on to talk about talk about some of the Orpheus, the remnants of Orpheus and the cup. How in some of the Orphic literature, the cup was also seen as this mixing point in the creation of the world in the various spheres. And that this world came into being. Let me see if I find it real quickly here. Here we go. Now, Orpheus is said to have called ether the mighty whirlpool, which forms the egg or womb. Again, womb is cup in some of the modern pagan, neo-pagan groups. This forms the egg or the cup, the womb of the cosmos. And it is the modification of the chaos or Rhea and the eternally flowing of the mother god, the great container, as Thecla says, the last infinity by which matter is circumscribed is the container and is the field, the plane of ideas. About her is neither limit nor formation, nor seat, but excessive darkness. It's almost kind of this idea of we have toward the great mother, not only the great mother, but the Black Madonna. The Black Madonna being the infinite possibility in the darkness and corresponding to that midnight hour and to the dark of the world where everything in the next day can be born afresh and all possibilities exist. And Plato, as we see in his Psychonomy, speaks openly of the Creator of the cup, the mixing or the vortex of the elements, in which the deity mixes the all-soul of the universal nature with the purest cosmic elements from within. He also ladles out the souls of men composed into less impure elements. So it's a wonderful idea. Now we're thinking now of the cup and the basin as symbol of the whole creation. Now most of the early quote was coming from the Corpus Hermetica. So as I'm still waiting for things to happen at work, I pulled out my copy of the Corpus Hermetica. And it's very short, and it's called the Discourse of Hermes to Tot, the mixing bowl or the monad. And let me read this. Since the craftsman, we have to remember we're talking Platonists here. So when we're talking the demiurge in Hermeticism, and is as a craftsman, we should think of him as a more benign being than the Gnostic demiurge. So, since the craftsman made the whole cosmos by reason speech and not by hand, it's rather Kabbalistic, isn't it? You should conceive of him as present, always existing, having made all things, as the one and only one, and having crafted by his own will the things that are. For this is his body. Rather comes back, doesn't it? For this is his body, neither tangible nor visible, nor measurable, nor dimensional, nor like any other body. It is not fire, nor water, nor air, nor spirit, yet all things come from it. Kind of want to grab that little place there where it says, where it starts out that line, for this is his body, and you have to think of the words of institution, don't you? Okay, here we go. So, you know, it's almost, we think about like, what was the role of Hermeticism and these mysteries coming into early Christianity? And it's like we've got a little bit of a byline here. Okay. Because he is good, it was not for himself alone that he wished to make the offering and to ordain earth. So he sent the man below the adornment of the divine body, mortal life from life eternal, immortal, is a coming down from all of our souls into this world. And if the cosmos prevailed over living things as something ever living, prevailed over the cosmos through reason and mind, and man became the spectator of God's work, he looked at it in astonishment and recognized his maker. And God shared reason among all people, O Tot, but not mine, though he begrudged it none. Grudging envy comes not from high, but from the forms below in the souls of people who do not possess mind. So then we have sort of the questions between Tot and Hermes. For what reason then did God share the mind with all of them, my father? He answers, he wanted to put it between souls, my child, as a prize for them to contest. And he questions, and where did he put it? He explains here. He filled a great mixing bowl with it and sent it below, appointing a herald whom he commanded to make the following proclamation to human hearts. And this is what J.R.S. Meads wrote before. Immerse yourself in the mixing bowl. If your heart has strength, and if it believes that you will rise up again to one who has sent the mixing bowl below, if it recognizes the purpose of your coming to be, and all those who healed this proclamation immerse themselves in mind, mind being Christ, immerse themselves in mind and participated in knowledge and became perfect people because they received mind, of course, perfect meaning Gnostic. And those who missed the point of the proclamation are people of reason, missed the point of the proclamation are people of reason because they did not receive the gift of mind as well and do not know the purpose or the agents of their coming to be. Again, people who do not recognize gnosis are lost. These people have sensations much like those of unreasoning animals, since their temperament is willful and angry. They feel no awe of the things that deserve to be admired. They divert their attention to pleasures and appetites of their bodies. They believe that mankind came to be for such purposes. But those who participate in the gift that comes from God, O taught, are immortal rather than mortal, if one compares their deeds. For in the mind of their own, they have comprehended all things on earth, things in heaven, and even what lies beyond heaven. Having raised themselves so far, they have been seen as the good, and having seen it, they have come to regard the wasting of time here below as a calamity. And they have scorned every corporal and incorporeal thing, and they have hastened toward the one and only. This taught is the way to learn about the mind, to resolve the perplexities in divinity, and to understand God. For the mixing bowl is divine. I too wish to be immersed, my father. And then he goes on to tell him about how he has to judge between, earthly and non-earthly things. But we have the thing, I too wish to be judged. And the discussion, little commentary about these verses is real eye-opening. So in the notes, it says, immerse translates as baptism, which, and so which is kind of something to kind of keep in your mind here about the two big sacraments two of the biggest sacraments we've inherited or have come out of Christianity, the baptism and the Eucharist. Lepe speaks, another scholar, explains that while baptizi are occasionally found in a religious context in Hellenism, they do not acquire a technical sacral sense. However, his account of the importance in Egyptian religion of washing and drowning in the Nile is worth noting. See also the inexplorable water of gods of Hermes who protects, in the letter of the 4th written by the devotee of Hermes Trismegistus. And it probably was written in Hermopolis. And it points out that baptism was important to Gnostic groups. So at the end of the final accounting, a work of alchemical and spiritual advice addressed to Theosobia, Zosimus urges her to rush to Promandes, and having been baptized in the crater or cup, rise up to your race. And of course, the crater, as J.R.S. Mead pointed out, is a vessel for mixing wine and water, which is actually what's done in the, which is done within the Eucharist too. There's a mixing of the water and the wine. And kratasio means the mixing or the pouring of wine to be used in an initiation or sacrifice. And puts out the scholar Fergesi, cites an example of the connection opposed to fusion between the ceremonial, and he claims that the two rites, one Eucharist and one baptism, were always kept distinct, and they are distinct. They're never mixed up. Again, he cites the, are always kept distinct. And then he makes an interesting reference here about Proverbs. Leave wisdom and seek wisdom and prove understanding by gnosis and by knowledge. And in this context where wisdom has mingled wine in her bowl, he recalls the Gnostic formula of drinking knowledge and mystic drunkenness. Now, at that, I actually had to look up into Proverbs. Let me make sure I don't lose my place here. And Proverbs 9, this version, New English, I I didn't check other versions. I know it's pretty close. Proverbs 9 will be familiar to all our Oblates of Holy Sophia and other Sophia admirers. Proverbs 9 begins, wisdom has built her house. She has hewn 7 pillars. So some say this is the cosmos and the 7 pillars are planets. She has killed a beast and spiced her wine and had spread the table and proclaims out to her maidens, sent her maidens out to proclaim the highest part of the town. Come in, you simpletons. And she says to the fool, come in and taste the wine that I have spiced. Cease to be silly and you will live and grow in understanding. So as I've read this a number of times, the whole line of spiced her wine, that when Sophia calls us forth for knowledge and wisdom, part of this is also pulling together the wine and the wine of knowledge. And that's what's being referenced here. And he recalls the formula of drinking knowledge and mystic drunkenness. Now, this drunkenness is, when I think of it, I think of of Rumi and how many of the Sufi poets have talked about being drunk. And when the Sufi poets talk about being drunk, they talk about it and they talk about wine actually this way too, of being entranced and being almost taken into another point with love or with knowledge from the teacher, And that there's a reference here in the commentary for a quote of drinking knowledge. Not only this mystic drunkenness, which works with the Sufis, I think we're kind of familiar with it, but drinking knowledge. And he has that quote. And, we come across, it's one of these phrases. It's in there in English. I'm sure Shakespeare used it, playwrights have used it. We talk about drinking of the cup of knowledge. Yet, it's nothing that we necessarily have linked with the sort of, as part of these things that are within there of the sacrament, And here, look, continued for a little bit. It says, however, on the basis of the fragment of the Valentinian Gnostic material with links to ceremonial bath with gnosis. And we've got a few, it cites the references to the refutations of the heresies. And then concludes that the purpose of plunging baptism has been the cleansing rather than drinking. Of course, we know that. And then it goes on. To account for the baptism in a mixing bowl, he refers to Pistis Sophia and the second book of Jude, in which Jesus miraculously turns a cup of wine into the water. He turns into water of the baptism life and baptizes the disciples with it. And I was thinking about this, about a week or so ago, about whether this is actually a converse and a flip on the traditional idea of Eucharist, or if this is actually something that says that, okay, through the consumption of the wine in that sacrament, one can also be cleaned and ready for the, cleaned and baptized again, which brings up the question of whether or not there was multiple baptisms practiced in the early Gnostics. Okay, and we go on and present that the blending of the two rites, that one is an absorption in the sacred drink taken from the cup, and the other is in the bath of purification and initiation in this context. And I just think, and that's all I'm going to read from these for today. But it makes me think about a bit of how much there's still out there, how much we can maybe, pull from these ancient texts to at least experiment with these sorts of Eucharistic, these sorts of sacramental models, taking the Hermetic literature, these Hermetic ideas, and putting them into a Gnostic ritual without some of the Christian trappings. So thank you for listening to this. I hope some of these ideas have inspired you. Again, the books were The Hymn of Hermes by G.R.S. Mead, and this is available also on gnosis.org. The Thrice Great Hermes by G.R.S. Mead again, available online. And then there's also an old version of the Corpus Hermetica, available also online by G.R.S. Mead, or the newer version by Copenhagen, with a lot of descriptions about it. And this is probably, if you're going to actually buy and invest in something about the Corpus Hermetica, I think this is kind of the standard text to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope maybe this is giving you some room for thoughts. Thank you. Blessings, and may light always be with you. Bye.